The council chamber floated in the darkness of space, a massive structure orbiting the neutral planet of Axis Prime. Inside, representatives from 47 different species sat in their designated areas. The chamber was designed to accommodate all forms of life, from the floating gas creatures of Nephros to the silicon-based beings from the core worlds. Today, the chamber buzzed with anxious energy. Ambassador Taeyang Li sat in the human section, watching the chaos unfold. He had been Earth's representative for 3 years now, and he had never seen the council this disturbed. On the main screen, a planet burned. Kesto 7, a Quillari colony world, was under attack. The Quillari were an insect-like species, peaceful and logical. They had been part of the Galactic Council for over 5,000 years. Their colony had 2 million civilians, and right now those civilians were dying. The images on the screen showed cities on fire and people fleeing in panic. Councillor Vexithari, the Quillari representative, stood at the speaking platform. His voice translator made his clicking sounds into words the others could understand. "We request immediate assistance. Our people are dying. The Ravagers show no mercy." High Commander Brel Noth, a large reptilian from the Thornid Collective, responded in his slow, measured way. "We sympathize with your situation. However, military intervention is not the Council way. We propose economic sanctions against the Ravagers." Taeyang felt his jaw tighten. Economic sanctions. The Quillari were dying right now, and the Council wanted to talk about trade restrictions. Another councillor, a floating being of pure energy, spoke up. "We could send a diplomatic mission. Perhaps we can negotiate with the Ravagers." "We tried that," Vexthari said, his voice breaking through the translator. "They killed our diplomats. Please, we need help now, not in 3 weeks." The council erupted in discussion. Some supported sending an observation fleet. Others wanted to form a committee to study the situation. A few suggested offering the Quillari refugees a place to relocate. No one talked about actually fighting. Taeyang understood why. The Galactic Council had not seen war in 3,000 years. Every species in this chamber had evolved past violence. They settled disputes through diplomacy and economic pressure. War was something from their ancient past, a dark time they had left behind. Humanity was different. Earth had joined the Council only 50 years ago. Humans were the newcomers. The young species still rough around the edges. And unlike everyone else in this chamber, humans still remembered how to fight. The vote came. The Council agreed to send a peacekeeping observation fleet to Kesto 7. It would arrive in 3 weeks. By then, Vexithari's people would be dead or enslaved. Taeyang stood up. His translator amplified his voice across the chamber. "Earth offers military assistance. We can have ships in the Kesto system within 48 hours. The chamber fell silent. Every eye, sensor, and perception organ turned toward the human section. High Commander Brel Noth spoke first. "Did you say military assistance? Humans still maintain a military?" "Yes," Taeyang replied simply. The chamber erupted again, but this time in shock and horror. A councillor from the Varan species who looked like a tall, thin deer spoke up. "But why? What purpose does a military serve in a civilized society?" "To protect those who cannot protect themselves," Taeyang answered. "The Quillari need help now. We can provide it." Vexthari looked at Taeyang with his large compound eyes. Hope and fear mixed in his posture. "You would fight for us? You would send your people to die for strangers?" "If necessary, yes." Another wave of shock ran through the chamber. The concept was alien to these species. They had security forces, yes. They had police and guards. But soldiers, warriors trained to kill and prepared to die? That was barbaric. That was primitive. High Commander Brel Noth's scales darkened, a sign of deep concern. "Ambassador Li, military action is dangerous. Your species is young. You don't understand the risks. War destroyed many civilizations before they learned better. We don't want humanity to make the same mistakes." "We understand the risks," Taeyang said quietly. "But we also understand that sometimes the only thing evil needs to succeed is for good people to do nothing." The chamber filled with confused murmurs. The translator struggled with the word evil. Most of these species had forgotten such concepts. A counselor from the Pristine Collective, a crystalline being, spoke with a voice like chimes. "Violence only creates more violence. If you attack the Ravagers, you may start a war that spreads across the galaxy. If we do nothing," Taeyang countered, "the Ravagers will learn that council worlds are easy targets. They'll attack again, and again. How many millions will die while we debate and discuss? Vexthari stepped forward. With respect to this council, my people don't have time for this debate. We're dying right now. If the humans are willing to help, I accept their offer. This is madness, another counselor protested. These humans are talking about war like it's normal, like it's acceptable. They're dangerous. Taeyang looked around the chamber at all these peaceful, civilized species. They had lived in peace for so long they had forgotten what the universe was really like. They had forgotten that peace only exists when someone is willing to defend it. You're right, he said. We are dangerous. Every human carries the capacity for violence. We haven't evolved past it. We haven't forgotten how to fight. But we've learned to control it, to direct it. We use violence only to protect, never to conquer. Judge us by our actions, not your fears. The voting began. Many species abstained, unwilling to support military action, but also unwilling to condemn it. In the end, the council gave permission for Earth to respond, mainly because Vexthari had already accepted the offer. After the session ended, Taeyang returned to his quarters and opened a secure channel to Earth. Within minutes, he was speaking with Admiral Jin-Ho Park at Fleet Command. The council approved our intervention, Taeyang said, but they're terrified of us now. They should be, Jin-Ho replied. Not because we're cruel, but because we're capable. How bad is the situation on Kesto 7? Bad, 2 million civilians under attack. The Ravagers are raiders, pirates on a large scale. They have numbers but not much discipline. We'll handle it. I'm dispatching Battle Group 7. Captain Jisoo Park is in command. They'll be there in 40 hours. The council observers will be watching, Taeyang warned. Everything we do will be judged. Good, let them watch. Let them see what happens when someone actually answers a call for help. The channel closed. Taeyang stood at his window looking out at the stars. Somewhere out there, humans were preparing for war. They would check their weapons, brief their troops, and say goodbye to loved ones. Some of them would die. They knew it, accepted it, and went anyway. That's what made humans different. That's what made them dangerous. And that's what might just save the Quillari. Back in the council chamber, Councillor Vexithari stood alone, looking at the images of his dying world. He had asked for help and only the humans answered. He didn't know if that made him fortunate or doomed. Perhaps both. The galaxy was about to learn something it had forgotten long ago. Sometimes peace requires warriors. Sometimes survival demands people willing to fight. And humanity had not forgotten either lesson. The human fleet arrived at the edge of the Kestos system exactly 40 hours after the council meeting. 3 destroyers, 1 carrier, and 2 marine assault ships dropped out of faster-than-light travel in perfect formation. To the alien observation vessels waiting at a safe distance, the human ships looked wrong. Every council species designed their vessels for efficiency and beauty. Smooth curves, elegant lines, minimal weapons. The human ships were different. They were blocky, angular, covered in armor plating. Weapons batteries lined their hulls like the teeth of some ancient predator. These were ships built for one purpose: war. Councillor Vexthari watched from the observation vessel Providence, along with representatives from 12 other species. They had come to witness humanity's response, though most expected to see a quick negotiation or perhaps a show of force. None of them understood what was actually coming. Technician Hyorin Bayek sat at her monitoring station, intercepting human communications. She was human too, assigned to help the aliens understand what was happening. Right now she wished she had any other job. They're doing pre-battle checks, she explained to the confused observers, making sure all weapon systems are working properly. A Varan counselor, tall and deer-like, tilted his head. But why do they have so many weapons? Surely a few would be enough for any defensive purpose. Hyorin didn't know how to explain. These aliens had no concept of military doctrine, of overwhelming firepower, of making sure your enemy couldn't fight back. Redundancy, she said finally. If one weapon fails, they have others. On the main screen, they could see inside one of the marine assault ships. Human soldiers moved through corridors, checking equipment. Each soldier wore heavy armor and carried multiple weapons: knives, rifles, grenades, and other devices the aliens couldn't identify. One Marine, Private First Class Sujin Kang, sat in the barracks sharpening a combat knife. The blade gleamed under the lights as she worked. Another Marine beside her painted dark colors on his face in strange patterns. The Varan counselor made a sound of distress. Why are they decorating themselves? Is this some kind of ritual? Camouflage, Hyorin explained. It helps them blend into shadows, makes them harder to see. But why would they need to hide? They're rescuers, not hunters. Hyorin had no good answer for that. To humans, combat was hunting. Every Marine was a predator, trained to stalk and kill. These peaceful aliens would never understand. The audio feed from the Marine briefing room came through next. Major Daehyun Choi stood before his assembled troops. He was a veteran, scarred and hard. When he spoke, his voice was calm but firm. Listen up. We're dropping onto Kesto 7 in 3 hours. Intelligence says the Ravagers have approximately 20,000 fighters on the ground. We'll be going in with 400 Marines. The aliens listening gasped. The numbers were insane. 50 enemies for every human. Choi continued. The Ravagers aren't trained soldiers. They're raiders, pirates, undisciplined. They rely on numbers and brutality. We rely on training and tactics. Stick to your squads, follow your orders, and we'll get through this. He paused and his voice softened slightly. I won't lie to you. We're going into hell down there. Some of us won't be coming back. But every Marine who falls will save 100 Quillari civilians. That's the job. That's what we signed up for. The Marines responded with a shout, a battle cry that made the alien observers flinch. They weren't afraid. They were ready. Eager, even. Counselor Vexthari watched in horror and confusion. They know they'll die? And they still want to go? Not all of them will die, Hyorin said quietly. But yes, some will. And yes, they still want to go. It's their duty. Duty? To die for strangers? To protect the innocent. That's what Marines do. On another screen, Captain Jisoo Park sat in the command chair of the destroyer Indomitable. She was reviewing the battle plan with her officers. The language they used was cold, clinical, terrible. We'll begin with orbital bombardment of Ravager positions, she said, pointing to a tactical map. Focus on their landing zones and supply depots. Try to minimize collateral damage, but the priority is breaking their logistics. Expected civilian casualties? An officer asked. The area is mostly evacuated. We're estimating less than 50 collateral deaths, all unavoidable. The aliens listening couldn't breathe. She was talking about killing civilians like it was an acceptable cost. 50 deaths, just a number on a report. Lieutenant Woo Jin Nam spoke up. Ma'am, we could wait for more precise intelligence. Reduce the risk to civilians. And let the Ravagers kill another 1,000 while we wait? No, we go with what we have. Acceptable losses are part of war. War. The word hung in the air like poison. These aliens had no word for it in their own languages, not anymore. They had to use the human term, and it filled them with dread. Vexithari looked at Hyorin with his large, compound eyes. How can she be so calm? She's talking about death like it's nothing. It's not nothing to her, Hyorin replied. But if she shows fear, her crew will fear too. Leaders have to be strong, even when they're scared inside. In the Marine barracks, Sujin Kang pulled out a small device and recorded a message. Her hands were steady, her voice clear. Hi, Mom. Hi, Dad. If you're seeing this, it means I didn't make it back. I want you to know I'm not scared. Well, maybe a little scared, but that's normal. I'm proud to be here. Proud to be doing something that matters. The Quillari need help, and we're the only ones who can help them. Please don't be angry at the Corps. This was my choice. I love you both. Take care of each other. She saved the message and tucked the device away. Then she picked up her rifle and began checking it one more time. Around her, other Marines did the same. Some prayed. Some wrote letters. Some just sat in silence, preparing their minds for what was coming. The alien observers were beyond horrified now. These young humans were preparing for death, like someone might prepare for a difficult test. They accepted it, dealt with it, and moved on. This is madness, a crystalline counselor said, its voice chiming with distress. These humans are sick. They're broken. No healthy mind could face death this way. Hyorin felt anger flash through her, but she kept her voice level. They're not sick. They're brave. There's a difference. Bravery is not accepting death. Bravery is finding a way to avoid it. Sometimes, Hyorin said softly, there is no way to avoid it. Sometimes someone has to stand between evil and innocence. Sometimes someone has to pay the price. On the bridge of the Indomitable, Captain Jisoo Park opened a channel to the entire battle group. Her face appeared on every screen, in every ship. All hands, this is Captain Park. In 2 hours, we begin the assault on Kesto 7. I know many of you are thinking about home right now, about the people you love. Hold on to those thoughts. Remember what we're fighting for. The Quillari civilians down there have families too. Children, parents, friends. They're counting on us, she paused, and when she spoke again, her voice was harder. The Ravagers chose violence. They chose to prey on the weak. We're going to teach them that weakness and peace are not the same thing. We're going to show them what happens when they threaten the innocent. And we're going to make sure they never forget. The crew responded with determination. They weren't doing this for glory or conquest. They were doing it because it was right. The alien observers watched all of this in stunned silence. They had thought humans were joining galactic civilization, becoming enlightened like everyone else. Now they realized the truth. Humans hadn't left their violent past behind. They had brought it with them into the stars. Counselor Vexathari felt torn. His people were dying, and only these violent humans had answered the call for help. Were they saviors or monsters? Perhaps both. The countdown began. 2 hours until the assault. The Marines loaded onto their dropships. The destroyers moved into position. The carrier launched its fighter craft. Everything moved with precision, efficiency, and purpose. This was humanity at war. And the galaxy had never seen anything like it. Hyorin looked at the alien observers around her. They were terrified, disgusted, confused. They would be even more horrified when the real fighting began. But they would also see something they had forgotten. That peace only exists because someone, somewhere, is willing to fight for it. The human fleet moved toward Kestos 7 like a storm approaching land. And on the planet below, the Ravagers had no idea what was coming for them. The drop pods hit Kestos 7's atmosphere like meteors. Inside each pod, 4 Marines sat strapped in, feeling the heat and the violent shaking. Private First Class Sujin Kang gripped her rifle and watched the temperature readings climb. The pod's outer shell glowed red-hot as it cut through the air at impossible speeds. 30 seconds to impact, the automated voice announced. Sujin looked at her squad mates. Sergeant Boram Yoon sat across from her, eyes closed, breathing steady. Next to Boram, Private Hyon squeezed his lucky charm so hard his knuckles were white. Corporal Min Seok just stared at the ceiling, his face blank. The alien observers watching from orbit couldn't understand how the humans stayed so calm. The pods were essentially armored coffins falling from space at terminal velocity. Any malfunction meant death, yet the Marines just sat there waiting. The pods slammed into the ground. The impact was brutal, crushing, but the shock absorbers did their job. The hatches blew open with explosive charges, and the Marines poured out into a war zone. Kestos 7's capital city of Nexus was burning. The Ravagers had torn through the downtown district, setting fires and destroying everything in their path. Bodies lay in the streets, both Quillari and Ravager. The smell of smoke filled the air. Major Dae-hyun Choi's voice came through every Marine's helmet radio. All squads sound off. One by one, squad leaders reported in. 400 Marines had dropped. 396 made it down alive. 4 pods had malfunctioned. 4 Marines dead before the fight even started. The aliens watching couldn't believe it. Deaths from just landing? This was acceptable to humans. Push forward, Choi ordered. Delta Company, secure the eastern sector. Charlie Company, take the commercial district. Bravo, you're with me. We're going straight up the middle. Sujin's squad moved through the ruined streets. Boram led from the front, rifle up, scanning for threats. They moved in formation, each Marine covering a different direction. Their training took over, making them move like parts of a single machine. The first contact came fast. Ravagers appeared from a collapsed building, firing crude energy weapons. The aliens watching expected the humans to take cover, to retreat, to seek safety. Instead, half the squad returned fire while the other half advanced. Sujin found herself running forward toward the enemy, while bullets and energy bolts flew past her. It went against every survival instinct, but her training was stronger than instinct. Suppressing fire, Boram shouted. Min Seok and Hyon opened up with their rifles on full automatic, pouring bullets at the Ravager position. The enemy ducked behind cover. In that moment, Boram led Sujin and another Marine around the flank. The Ravagers never saw them coming. The fight was over in seconds. 5 Ravagers dead, no human casualties. Counselor Vexathari watched through the drone feeds, mandibles clicking in agitation. They ran toward the enemy. That's suicide. Technician Hyorin shook her head. That's a flanking maneuver. Pin the enemy down from the front, attack from the side. Basic tactics, but they could have been killed. Yes, but staying in place would have gotten them killed for sure. Sometimes you have to move forward or die. The Marines pushed deeper into the city. Resistance was fierce. The Ravagers outnumbered them badly, but the humans had training, coordination, and something else. They didn't panic. A squad got pinned down in a collapsed shopping complex. 20 Ravagers had them surrounded, firing from multiple positions. The aliens watching thought it was over for those humans. Sergeant Boram's voice cut through the radio chatter. Alpha 3, this is Bravo 4, we're pinned. Requesting support. Negative, Bravo 4, came the response. All units engaged. You're on your own. Boram didn't hesitate. All right, we do this ourselves. Minseo Kian, your suppression. Sujin, Taeho, Kyung, you're with me. We're going through them. Sujin felt her heart hammer in her chest. Going through? That meant charging the enemy position. That meant running into gunfire. That meant some of them would probably die. On my mark, Boram said. Her voice was steady, calm. 3, 2, 1, go! Minsuk and Hyun opened fire, their rifles roaring. The noise was deafening. Energy bolts flashed past. And Boram ran forward directly at the enemy. Sujin followed. Her training took over. Left foot, rifle up, find a target, fire. A Ravager went down. Another turned toward her. She fired first. It fell. Taeho took a hit to his armor. The impact spun him around, but the armor held. He kept moving, kept firing. Kyung threw a grenade. The explosion scattered the Ravagers. In 30 seconds of brutal chaos, they broke through the enemy line. 2 Marines wounded, none dead. 15 Ravagers down. The alien observers couldn't process what they'd seen, couldn't understand it. The humans had charged into certain death and survived through pure aggression and skill. They're insane, a Varen counselor whispered. Absolutely insane. Across the city, similar scenes played out. Marines advancing under fire, taking casualties but never stopping. They fought building to building, room to room. When they found Quillari civilians hiding in the rubble, they protected them with their own bodies. Lieutenant Woojin Nam coordinated from orbit, watching the tactical displays. His job was to call in airstrikes and orbital bombardment, but only where it wouldn't endanger civilians or friendly forces. I need fire support on grid 774, a squad leader called in. Ravager heavy weapons position. Woojin checked the map. Too close to a civilian shelter? Negative. Friendlies in the danger zone. Copy that. We'll handle it ourselves, and they did. The Marines attacked the heavy weapons position with grenades and small arms fire. It cost them 2 wounded, but they took it. Major Choi pushed forward with Bravo Company heading for the Ravager Command Center. Intelligence said their warlord Kreshtar was there. Cut off the head and the body would die. Choi's company met heavy resistance. The Ravagers threw everything at them. Energy weapons, explosives, even melee fighters with crude blades. The humans fought with rifles, grenades, and when necessary, their own knives. One Marine, Corporal Dong Hyun, found himself in hand-to-hand combat with a Ravager twice his size. The alien observers watched in horror as human and alien grappled, each trying to kill the other. Dong Hyun was smaller, weaker, but he was trained. He used the Ravager's size against it, swept its legs, and finished it with his combat knife. The aliens watching couldn't look away. This was primal, brutal, terrible. This was war in its rawest form. Inside a medical station behind the lines, Dr. Young Mi-han worked frantically on wounded Marines. Blood covered her uniform. She'd been operating for 6 hours straight. Her hands never stopped moving. I need another unit of blood here, she shouted. Where's my nurse? Right here, ma'am. Nurse Jiwon ran over with the blood pack. The Marine on the table had taken shrapnel from an explosion. His armor had saved his life, but barely. Young Mai worked with precision, removing metal fragments, sealing blood vessels, keeping him alive. Will he make it? Jiwon asked. If we can stop the bleeding, yes. Get me the surgical laser. The alien observers watching the medical feeds were almost as horrified by this as by the combat itself. The humans were so familiar with trauma, so practiced at dealing with catastrophic injuries. How many wars had they fought to become this skilled at saving shattered bodies? On the front lines, the fighting intensified. The Ravagers realized they were losing and grew desperate. Warlord Kreshtar ordered his forces to fight harder, to kill more humans. But his troops were breaking. They'd never faced an enemy like this. The Ravagers were used to fighting peaceful species. Aliens who ran, who surrendered, who begged for mercy. The humans did none of these things. They advanced. They fought. They never stopped. Kreshtar himself watched from his command center as human Marines breached the outer defenses. He had 1,000 warriors. The humans attacking him numbered less than 50. The outcome should be obvious, but his warriors were dying. The humans moved through his defenses like they weren't there. Small groups of Marines working together, covering each other, never exposing themselves unnecessarily. Professional, efficient, deadly. For the first time in his life, Kreshtar felt something he'd never experienced before: fear. Major Choi's voice cut through the radio static. All units, the enemy is breaking. Keep the pressure on. Don't let them regroup. We end this today. The Marines pushed harder. Building by building, they drove the Ravagers back. The aliens might have numbers, but the humans had something more important: the will to win no matter the cost. As night fell on Kestos 7, the human flag rose over the captured command center. Warlord Kreshtar was dead, killed in the final assault. His surviving warriors fled into the wilderness. The butcher's bill came in. 18 Marines dead, 43 wounded, against an enemy force of 20,000 in urban combat. Those numbers were miraculous. To the aliens watching, those numbers were catastrophic. Counselor Vexthari stared at the casualty list, unable to speak. 18 dead, 18 young beings who would never go home. And the humans acted like this was acceptable. Like this was victory. How can you celebrate? He asked Hyorin. 18 of your people are dead. Hyorin looked at him with tired eyes. We're not celebrating the deaths. We're honoring their sacrifice. And we're grateful it wasn't worse. How could it be worse? 18 dead. The makeshift medical facility smelled of disinfectant and blood. Dr. Youngmi Han moved from bed to bed, checking on her patients. Most were stable now, but 3 were still critical. She'd been working for 18 hours straight, and her hands still shook slightly from exhaustion and adrenaline. Private First Class Sujin Kang lay in one of the beds, her leg bandaged where shrapnel had torn through. She was lucky. The armor had taken most of the damage. She'd walk again in a few weeks. The Marine in the bed next to her, Corporal Dong Hyun, had lost his left arm below the elbow. He stared at the ceiling, processing what his life would be like now. How are you feeling? Sujin asked him. Dong Hyun managed a weak smile, like I got hit by a truck. But I'm alive. That's more than Ki Young can say. Private Ki Young had been in their company. A grenade had killed him instantly during the assault on the command center. He was 20 years old. He'd been planning to study engineering after his service ended. The alien medical staff working alongside the humans were disturbed by everything they witnessed. Not just the injuries, though, those were terrible enough. It was how the humans dealt with them. The wounded Marines joked with each other. They made light of their injuries. One Marine who'd lost an eye said he'd always wanted to try an eye patch anyway. A Quillari doctor named Mirthos approached young me. How do they do this? How do they accept such terrible wounds with humor? Young Mai finished checking an IV line before answering. Gallows humor. It's how soldiers cope. If they don't laugh, they'll cry. And crying doesn't help anyone right now. But they're seriously injured. Some will never fully recover. Don't they understand that? They understand perfectly. That's why they're joking. They're trying to keep each other's spirits up. Mirthos watched a Marine with severe burns on his arms, making his squad mates laugh with a story about his first day of training. The other humans laughed, genuinely laughed, despite their own pain. It was incomprehensible. Captain Jisoo Park walked through the medical facility, stopping at each bed. She knew every Marine by name. She asked about their injuries, their families, their plans. When she reached the bed of Private Kyung-soo, she paused. Kyung-soo was dying. A piece of shrapnel had torn through his abdomen, and despite Young Mi's best efforts, the damage was too severe.
He had maybe an hour left. Jisoo sat down beside his bed.
How are you doing, Private? Been better, ma'am. His voice was weak. Did we win? Yes, the city is secure. The Quillari are safe, he smiled. Good, that's good. Your family will be notified. You'll receive full honors, and I'm putting you in for a medal. Don't need a medal, ma'am. Just knowing we did the job is enough. They sat in silence for a while. Then Kyung-soo spoke again. Ma'am, I'm scared, I know. That's okay. Being brave doesn't mean not being scared. Will you stay? I don't want to be alone. I'll stay as long as you need me. The alien observers watching through the medical facility's cameras couldn't understand. Captain Park was the commanding officer. She had 1,000 duties. Yet she sat holding a dying soldier's hand, doing nothing but keeping him company in his final moments. Counselor Vexthari watched with Myrthos. Why does she stay? What purpose does it serve? No tactical purpose, Myrthos said quietly. But I think that's the point. She's not staying because it's useful. She's staying because he needs her. 20 minutes later, Kyung-soo died. Jisoo closed his eyes gently, stood and returned to her duties. She didn't cry, didn't break down. She just continued working, carrying the weight of another lost Marine. The psychological evaluations began the next day. Every Marine who'd been in combat had to speak with a counselor. The aliens observing these sessions were deeply disturbed by the questions asked. How many enemy combatants did you engage? The counselor, Dr. Sung-ho, asked Soo-jin. 6 confirmed kills, ma'am. How did that make you feel? Soo-jin was quiet for a moment. Necessary. They were trying to kill civilians. They were trying to kill my squad. I did what I had to do. Any guilt? Any intrusive thoughts? Some. I keep seeing their faces. But I know I made the right call. That's normal. The guilt shows you're still human. The fact that you'd do it again if necessary shows you're a good Marine. The aliens couldn't comprehend this conversation. The humans were acknowledging the psychological damage of killing, while simultaneously affirming it was the right thing to do. They treated violence as both traumatic and necessary. The contradiction seemed impossible. Across the city, the reconstruction had begun. Marines worked alongside Quillari civilians, clearing rubble and rebuilding structures. The humans were just as efficient at construction as they were at destruction. Sergeant Bo-ram Yoon led a squad helping evacuate survivors from a collapsed apartment building. Her armor was still scorched from battle, but she worked with gentle hands, carefully moving debris to avoid injuring anyone trapped beneath. A young Quillari child, no more than 5 years old, was pulled from the rubble. Scared and injured, the child clicked in distress. Bo-ram picked them up carefully, making soothing sounds. Despite not speaking the language, she communicated safety, protection. Myrthos watched this scene and approached Bo-ram. You saved my family. During the battle, your squad protected the shelter where they were hiding. Bo-ram shrugged. Just doing the job, sir. But you risked your life for strangers, for aliens you'd never met. Why? Because you needed help. Isn't that reason enough? My people have no word for what you did. We have no concept that matches it. Really? What do you call it when someone helps another person in danger? We call it obligation or duty to community. But you have no community with us. No obligation. Yet you came anyway. Bo-ram thought about this. We call it being human. We look out for those who can't protect themselves. Doesn't matter if they're human or not. At the Galactic Council, an emergency session had been called. The chamber was in chaos. Representatives from 30 species shouted at once, their translators creating a cacophony of sound. Ambassador Tae-yang Lee stood at the human platform, waiting for order to be restored. When the chamber finally quieted, High Commander Brelnoth spoke. The humans have engaged in warfare. They have killed thousands of Ravagers. They have lost 18 of their own people. This is barbaric. This is everything the Council stands against. A counselor from the Varan species stood. I move that humanity be expelled from the Council. They are too dangerous, too violent. They don't belong in civilized space. Murmurs of agreement rippled through the chamber. Then Counselor Vexithari stood. With respect, I must disagree. His translator made his clicking speech understandable to all. The humans saved my people. 400,000 Quillari are alive because they acted when no one else would. At what cost? Brelnoth demanded. Violence begets violence. The Ravagers will retaliate. The Ravagers surrendered, Vexthari said. Their warlord is dead. Their fleet has sued for peace. They learned that council worlds are no longer easy targets. Tae-yang stepped forward. We are violent, yes. We carry the capacity for destruction. But we control it. We direct it only at those who would harm the innocent. We don't conquer. We don't enslave. We protect. You glorify war, another counselor shouted. No, Tae-yang said firmly. We honor those who were willing to fight and die so others could live. There's a difference. We don't celebrate killing. We mourn every loss. But we accept that sometimes violence is the only answer to violence. A crystalline counselor spoke, its voice like chimes. You have forgotten what it means to be civilized. War destroyed countless species before we learned better. And peace has made you vulnerable, Tae-yang countered. For 3,000 years you've lived without threats. But the universe doesn't care about your peace. The Ravagers didn't care. They would have killed millions if we hadn't stopped them. The debate raged for hours. In the end, no vote was taken. The council couldn't agree to expel humanity, but they also couldn't agree to accept what humans had done. Back on Kestos 7, Soo-jin sat in her hospital bed, recording another message to her parents. "Hi, Mom and Dad, I'm okay. Got a little banged up, but I'll be fine. I did something that mattered today. I helped save a world. I know the news is probably showing scary things, making us look like monsters. But I want you to know we're not monsters. We're just people trying to do the right thing." She paused, searching for words. "I've seen things I'll never forget. I've done things that will haunt me. But I'd do it all again. Because those Quilari civilians deserve to live. Because standing by while innocent people die is worse than any violence we committed." She ended the recording and looked out the window at the city. Quilari families walked the streets again, rebuilding their lives. Children played in the ruins, finding joy even in the wreckage. They were alive because humans had been willing to die for them. That had to mean something. That had to be worth the cost. Dr. Sung-ho finished his counseling sessions and compiled his report. 80% of the Marines showed signs of stress. 40% would need ongoing therapy. 10% might never fully recover from what they'd experienced. But when asked if they'd do it again, every single Marine said yes. That was what made humans different. That was what made them dangerous. And that was what might just change the galaxy forever. 6 months had passed since the Battle of Kestos 7. The galaxy was still trying to process what it had witnessed. In the Galactic Council chambers, debates continued almost daily about humanity's place in civilized space. But something had changed, something fundamental. Admiral Jin-ho Park, promoted after the successful mission, stood before a classroom of alien officers. The room was full of Quilari, Varan, and representatives from 6 other species. They wore uniforms, but they looked uncomfortable in them. Military training was still a foreign concept to most of them. "Today we're going to discuss defensive formations," Jin-ho said, bringing up a tactical display. "When you're under attack, your first priority is protecting civilians. Your second priority is maintaining unit cohesion." A Quilari officer named Tekris raised a hand. "Admiral, what about our own safety? Isn't survival the first priority?" Jin-ho smiled slightly. "That's the first thing you need to unlearn. A soldier's life matters, yes, but the mission comes first. If protecting civilians means taking risks, you take those risks." The alien officers shifted uncomfortably. This went against every instinct they had. Their species had evolved to avoid danger, to value individual survival above all else. The human approach was almost incomprehensible, but they were trying to learn. That was what mattered. Tekris had been 15 when the Ravagers attacked Kestos 7. His parents, siblings, and entire extended family had died in the first hours of the assault. He'd survived only because human Marines had fought their way to his shelter and held it against overwhelming odds. When humanity started offering military training to Council species, Tekris had been the first to volunteer. He wanted to learn. He wanted to be able to protect others the way the humans had protected what remained of his family. "It's hard," he'd told Jin-ho in their first meeting. "My instincts tell me to run from danger. Every fiber of my being says to prioritize my own survival." "That's normal," Jin-ho had replied. "Human instincts say the same thing. Training teaches you to overcome those instincts when necessary." Now, 6 months into the program, Tekris was beginning to understand. It wasn't about being fearless. It was about acting despite fear. Across the galaxy, similar training programs were underway. 6 Council species had requested human military advisors. They didn't want to become warriors themselves, but they recognized the need to be able to defend their worlds. The age of absolute peace was over. Former Private, now Corporal Soo-jin Kang, found herself teaching basic combat tactics to a group of Varan recruits. The tall, deer-like aliens were naturally timid, and holding a weapon made them visibly uncomfortable. "It's okay to be scared," Soo-jin told them. "Fear keeps you alert, but you can't let it control you." One of the Varan recruits, a young female named Lyra, spoke up. "How do you humans do it? How do you face death so calmly?" "We're not calm inside," Soo-jin admitted. "I was terrified during the Battle of Kestos 7. My hands were shaking. My heart was racing. But I'd been trained. My squad was counting on me. So I did the job despite being scared." But you could have died. Yes, but if I'd run away, others would have died instead. I'd rather risk my life than live knowing I let innocent people die when I could have helped. Lyra struggled with this concept. In Varan culture, self-preservation was the highest virtue. Deliberately risking one's life seemed not just brave but irrational. Yet here stood this human who had been wounded in battle, who had killed enemies, who had watched friends die. And she was willing to do it again if necessary. The contradiction fascinated and horrified Lyra in equal measure. At the Galactic Council, Counselor Vexithari had become an unexpected advocate for humanity. The 6 months since the battle had changed him. He'd spent time with human Marines, learning about their culture, their values, their perspective. "We were wrong about humanity," he said during a council session. "We saw their violence and called them barbarians. But we didn't see the context. We didn't understand the sacrifice." High Commander Brelnoth, still skeptical, responded. "They kill easily. They accept death as normal. How is that not barbaric?" "They don't kill easily," Vexithari corrected. "Every Marine who fought on Kesto 7 received psychological counseling afterward. They carry the weight of what they did. They mourn their fallen. They struggle with guilt and trauma. But they do it anyway because someone has to." He paused, letting his words settle. "We had 3,000 years of peace. We thought we'd evolved past violence. But we hadn't evolved past it. We'd just forgotten it. And when violence came for us, we were helpless. The humans haven't forgotten. They remember what the universe is really like." Ambassador Taeyang Lee stood. "The Council is considering a proposal to create a unified defense force, combining human military expertise with Council resources and personnel. I want to address some concerns." The chamber quieted. This was the moment everyone had been waiting for. "We're not trying to militarize the galaxy," Taeyang continued. "We're not trying to make every species into warriors. We're offering to help you defend yourselves, to give you the tools and knowledge to protect your people when diplomacy fails." "And what do humans get from this?" a counselor asked. "The same thing we've always wanted, a safer galaxy, partners we can rely on, the knowledge that if we're ever in trouble, others might help us the way we helped the Quilari." The debate continued for hours, but slowly, grudgingly, the council was coming around. They'd seen what happened when peaceful species faced violence. They'd seen the Ravagers sue for peace after facing human resistance. They'd seen that sometimes being civilized wasn't enough. On Earth, memorial services were held for the 18 Marines who died on Kesto 7. Thousands attended. Families grieved. Friends remembered. The president herself spoke about their sacrifice. Private Ki Young's parents stood at his grave marker. They were proud of their son, but the pride didn't ease the pain. He was 20 years old. He should have had decades of life ahead of him. Captain Jisoo Park attended every funeral. She spoke with every family. She carried the weight of command, of sending people into danger knowing some wouldn't return. "It never got easier, does it matter?" Ki Young's mother asked her. "Did his death mean something?" Jisoo chose her words carefully. 400,000 Kolari are alive today because of what your son and the others did. Children are growing up with parents they would have lost. Families are intact that would have been destroyed. Your son saved more lives than most people could in 100 years of living, but he didn't get to live those 100 years. No, and that's the tragedy. That's the cost. I wish I could tell you it was fair, that the universe balances these things out, but it doesn't. All I can tell you is that his sacrifice mattered, and we'll remember him." The mother nodded, tears streaming down her face. Her son was gone, but at least his death had meaning. 3 months after that, a new crisis emerged. A species called the Korthan, from outside Council space, began raiding colony worlds. They were more organized than the Ravagers, better equipped, more dangerous. When the distress call came, the response was different than before. The Council's new defense force deployed. It included 2 human destroyers, 3 Council security vessels, and a mixed force of Marines, human and alien, working together. Tekris was among them. The young Quilari wore armor marked with his unit designation. He carried a rifle he'd been trained to use, and despite the fear churning in his stomach, he was ready. The battle wasn't easy. The Korthan were tough opponents. The alien recruits struggled, their instincts screaming at them to run. But the humans beside them held firm, and that gave them courage. Tekris found himself in a firefight, hiding behind cover while energy bolts flashed overhead. A human corporal named Jae-sun crouched beside him. "You okay?" Jason asked. Terrified, Tekris admitted. Good means you're smart. When I say go, we're going to move to that building there. Stay low, move fast, ready? Tekris wanted to say no, wanted to stay where it was safe. But he thought about his family, about the civilians counting on them. He thought about the humans who'd saved him 6 months ago. Ready? He said. They moved together. Tekris made it to the building. He'd survived his first real combat movement, and while he was still terrified, he'd done it. He'd acted despite his fear. The battle ended in victory. Casualties were light, 3 wounded, none dead. The Korthan withdrew and, like the Ravagers before them, sued for peace. They'd learned that Council worlds could defend themselves now. After the battle, Corporal Sujin Kang found Tekris sitting alone, processing what he'd experienced. She sat down beside him. First combat is always the hardest, she said. Do you ever get used to it? Not really. You just get better at handling it. I was so scared. The entire time I wanted to run away. But you didn't, that's what matters. Courage isn't the absence of fear. It's doing what needs to be done despite fear. Tekris looked at her. How do you humans do this? How do you face death and violence and trauma and still keep going? Sujin was quiet for a moment. Because some things are worth fighting for. Worth dying for if it comes to that. Freedom, safety, protecting the innocent. Those things matter more than our fear. Back at the Council, the vote finally came. The Galactic Defense Force was approved, with humanity providing training and leadership. It wasn't perfect.